The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
So I'm Luke Dickerson. I teach at Northfield Elementary School. I've been there since 2010. This is my friend Sarah Chumney. I'll let her introduce herself a little bit.
I'm Sarah Chumney, and I was recently at Case Lane Academy, and I'm going to help open up the new school at Salem Elementary and Murfreesboro City Schools. A lot of our kids went over there, ESL kids, so I'll be with them.
And we do have to mention this morning we're giving cahoots to our district. Sarah is one of the finalists for Teacher of the Year in Tennessee, so we were super proud of her. And it's so awesome to have that acknowledgement as an ESL teacher. So.
I'm Regan Clark. I teach at Bradley, just down the street. This is my 5th year in ESL, 10th in teaching, and I think that's it. I think that's all.
Hi, I'm Sandy McDonald. I teach at Black Fox Elementary. This will be my 5th year, 6th year there. I can't even remember, but it's my 21st year teaching.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So our topic today is strengthening focus, reasoning with a focus on language. And a lot of our presentation is going to be based off of the resources of Doing and Talking, Math and Science, which were put out by the University of Wisconsin that partners with WIDA through a national grant with the National Science Foundation.
And this will be on the WIDA e-learning that Joanne showed us this morning.
Good.
So our content objectives today are we are going to investigate the relationship between language discourse and reasoning with students in the areas of math and science. And our language objective is we want to apply the practice of academic discourse through various activities to develop a deeper understanding of how to engage all learners in the academic language and support critical thinking. So we'll give you the resources where you can find some of the activities to use, but we won't go through all those activities. And
we were kind of excited this morning when Joanne and Katie were talking about the e-learning opportunities. One of the modules is actually the Doing and Talking Math and Science. So it's about the resource that we're discussing today, which is great.
So what is student discourse? When we were talking about doing a presentation, this is mostly like we want to do something for our content area teachers. Just a quick poll, how many of you are pull-out ESL teachers? Okay, so this is, like when we created this PowerPoint, it was for the intention of providing our content area teachers with some resources that they could use in the classroom. Because so many times we hear our students like saying how they don't get to talk in class and they talk a lot with us, but we want to give our teachers those tools so the students can be using their academic language and talking in an academic environment. In the long run, it's going to help with their academic language too. So as students build on conversations, they're building deeper level thinking skills and they're working with their peers. So it increases student engagement, like I said, and a lot of it too, I think of students when the teacher is saying, asking the questions and just a quick answer, the teacher restates questions and probes for further discussion. So with the student discourse, the kids are going and talking more and they're talking with their peers more than the teacher asking them. And of course, research shows that students, when they are engaged in classroom discussions, they're going to have a higher level of engagement, understanding, comprehension. So the research is there too for the students in the discourse.
Great, so Sandy's going to start us off with a quick little activity.
I want you just to turn and talk behind you, next to you, whatever. And just in your teaching, even if it's just in the past couple of years, what has changed over your experience in education? What types of things have changed? Makeup of the classrooms? Just what have you found that is changing? Okay, so gathering back around, would any of you guys like to there's tons and tons and tons of things that I know everyone came up with. What are a few of them that you think have been the most noticeable changes in your career? Nothing has changed for real. Okay.
Well, that's, I was just going to say that there's been a change from the teacher asking the critical thinking questions to now we are hoping for and aiming toward the student in the lesson creating a question and asking another student to explain and using the correct words with critical thinking so that they're comfortable with them, but asking another student that question and the student answers. And that's a huge difference in how I personally was teaching ESL. I was asking the critical questions and the challenging questions and asking them to think of their answers and then explain their answer in like maybe 2 or 3 ways. Now I'm aiming toward the intermediate students being able to understand the lesson and ask those questions of their peers.
Exactly, yes. The expectations of the role, of each specific role. And that's very important coming up to what we're going to dive further into, because the role of the teacher has shifted. Long ago was when the teacher was to stand in front of the school or in front of the classroom, write on the board, and pass out a worksheet. And as many trends have come and gone in education and the cycles that we've gone through, that's not coming back, okay? And this presentation is going to help us learn how to use that discourse and how our role has changed as a teacher to help benefit those children. I heard technology. Technology has changed everything we do. And it's not only changed everything we do as a teacher, it has changed the way children learn, it has changed the way that they see, and it has changed the way that they behave. They expect those things, or they're bored with them because they've used them so much. So those are many of the different things that have changed. One of the biggest, of course, that changes every day is our academic standards. And again, this discourse is going to help us go along with that. So what is different? Our science and math standards are changing, and they're changing every day to meet new STEM requirements. Our classrooms, we didn't mention that, at least I didn't hear it, but our classrooms are way more diverse. People are way more transient now. And we don't have small neighborhood schools anymore. Our schools are larger, so we have to accommodate those diverse classrooms. Access to technology, we have that. But do we have what we need to teach what we need to teach? Does the technology, do those resources match what we need to teach? That's constantly changing. And what Dina had said, students need to think at higher levels. We're not giving them the information, them regurgitating it back to us. We're giving them the blocks and letting us, trying to see what they can build with them. And that we want to see their evidence of what they have learned in those buildings.
Okay, and some of the things that we've seen specifically like with science are these 8 specific practices as they're known. And this has been common through all standards that we've seen kind of like adopted are kind of like this movement of changing science standards, like with next generation science standards, also with the current Tennessee science standards that we have. These 8 specific practices are kind of like embedded. Does anybody know why they're called practices and not like skills? Because it's things like asking, developing, planning, caring, analyzing and interpreting, using, constructing, engaging, obtaining, evaluating, communicating. Those typically are would be thought of as skills. So when the next generation science standards were developed, there was kind of this big discussion regarding skills and knowledge. So they came to some consensus about the term practice. So that's been very commonly used, because you don't just have to have the skills to be successful with science, you also have to have the knowledge. And this leads us to the STEM for ESL resources. You'll see WIDA and the University of Wisconsin, they were curious because there's been a gap between performance of ELLs and their non-ELL peers all across the country in performance with science. So they wanted to do this study. So they got a grant from the National Science Foundation to develop these resources. You can go to the website that the University of Wisconsin made. It's called STEM for ELLs. We'll have it at the end of this presentation. And there's just lots and lots of resources. And there's different packets and different pages. And you'll see something that may kind of confuse you a little bit is with the graphics with science, they're always going to be blue. And with math, they'll be green. So just be aware of that. A lot of us kind of think always science should be green, but with the resources that the University of Wisconsin published and they have available, every time you'll see a blue graphic, it will deal with science. And so along with this, they've presented this shift and change of conversational moves that we expect of English language learners, kind of what Dina was already mentioning. So being able to question and challenge and clarify, phrase and summarize, support and build on. And these moves require specific knowledge and specific skills. And so we're gonna kind of build into this today and delve in a little bit deeper with it.
So Luke has already covered the science portion of this. This is the math portion. In math, there are 6 specific changes: make, reason, construct, model, use, and look. In math, this chart is meant for teachers and students to be able to use. Teachers can use those charts to form their prompts and their questioning in the classroom. Students can use the chart to formulate their responses, especially the EL students. All students can use it during their academic conversation while they're learning the practices and the routines of the academic conversation. The 7 types of responses students would make to interact with one another's ideas: tell and support one's own idea, ask for clarification, restate or paraphrase an idea, summarize an idea, support someone's idea, build on someone's idea, or challenge someone's idea.
Okay, so with this visual here, on the WIDA website, they talk a lot about a new playing field. And when you look at these 2 visuals, which visual gives students more responsibility for thinking deeply and collaboratively? And then which one provides more opportunities for students to use and strengthen their language? You guys all agree the bottom one? So the top one is what a lot of times teachers are used to, like they're presenting to the students and giving them the information. Where the bottom one is where the teacher is facilitating the discussion and helping students engage together by more facilitating their discussions. And the teacher is moving the student discourse into more complex ideas and helps them become more effective English users, which is what we want our students to be more beneficial with using their English language. And what's great about this is, because you'll have a lot of teachers say, I just have one ESL student, but this is good for all students. All students need to be engaged in this type of conversations where they're using the academic vocabulary and and building on each other's ideas. And this is, having the students talk more, that's going to be where students are going to get their academic language in the classroom. So the new moves that is on this resource that we're going to share with you at the end, they talk about this spiral, and this spiral is representing language and action. Language serves as a tool for meaning making, and so as students engage in discussions or learning new ideas, and they engage in academic language along with their peers, and then all students have opportunities to engage in thinking, questioning, and problem solving. And what I like about this too is as students become more reflective in how they discuss and think of new ideas, and that's when the true comprehension is really going to come about. Because students, we want them to not be at the surface level, but to get a deeper level of understanding in science and math. And so that's what's really cool about the new moves. It's continuously working on their academic language.
And it develops that metacognition within students, as she was kind of saying, and what we want in the students to analyze their own moves and the moves of others.
Okay, so some misconceptions of student language. No students begin school with academic language, unless maybe their mom's a teacher and we're working on it at home. But so general education students or second language learners, they all need this opportunity to work on the academic language. And with our new standards, this is very critical. We have to make a shift in how we teach and facilitate our small groups. And the other one too is just putting students into small groups is not sufficient to achieve the gains we desire for our students. I know a lot of times our kids will sit there quietly if they're not engaged with the right group, or if they're with students that overpower them. So teachers want to be very strategic in how they group their students in order for them to achieve the desired success of learning and practicing the language.
And teaching them structures. I'm a big Kagan fan. So teaching structures on how to actually work with a group is a big deal.
Constructing rich opportunities for students to create meaning. You can read the examples up there. One of the biggest ones is number 1. It says that they must be immersed in the overall experience. This is not immersion. Me speaking to you is not immersion. Immersion is when they have everything involved and they are actually invested in it. It's their conversations that are guiding. It's what their idea is. You're still guiding them on topic, but they need to be fully immersed and being part of it, not a spectator. And the other, I feel like a major point of this aspect is that it needs to be, we always say learning needs to be relevant. Well, we know it's relevant, they don't. They may not know that at this moment this is relevant to them. So we need to provide those opportunities of how does this matter to you right now before they're ever going to buy into it and take part. These various opportunities provide not only the language and the knowledge, but it gives them the confidence when they're talking with their peers. It only boosts their language development in speaking in other situations as well.
One of the things I'll say about this slide too is, so those practices that we were initially going over, they're not taught like in isolation. They're kind of integrated into lessons. So it's not like we just are teaching, asking questions this 6 weeks or this week and moving on to something else, but it becomes like a format, and students begin to see this interconnectivity between disciplines and actions. I think that's very important. One of the things that you'll want to be aware of, so we don't have a lot of time today, but on the STEM for ESL website, there's lots of videos of these different discourse moves on the STEM for or ELL's website and page.
They're short. They're 5
yeah.
to 10 minutes.
So on that website, on the last tab, there's an area for resources. And when we plan on giving this to our content area teachers, we want to provide them with this, this map here. You can print them out off the website. But the goal of the teacher is to continue to probe and strengthen students' reasoning, and the teacher is continuously coaching students to help them further question and talk about the topic using academic language. So when I first saw this, it reminded me of like the academic stems that we used to use, but I feel like it goes a lot deeper in how it aligns with what our students need to know for the WIDA standards. So as a classroom teacher, I'd want them to start out with this, having this with them to guide them on how to question their students and making sure to keep building on what they're learning. So to take that surface level into a deeper level learning. So, okay. And then students, for our ELL students, there's a reminder to make sure that you repeat and go multiple times, like repeating what the discourse moves and to go deep with them. So for some of our students, you may just start with a couple of those discourse moves and then build on as students become more comfortable with them. Provide opportunities to discover and discuss the relationship between meaning and language, and discuss the relationship between linguistic choices and the disciplinary purposes it serves. So as ELL specialists, like this is something that we could help our teachers plan for when they're working with our ESL kids in the classroom with the new science standards and with the math, and just getting depending on their language levels, really getting them to where they need to be.
Think of it as like a lesson plan or a template that you can kind of keep at your side as you're asking questions, as you're going to the groups. Where are they? Okay, are they listening actively within their groups? And rather than a method, I think it helps to look at it as an overall plan, as a guide, just to help you.
I have a question. So when it talks about discuss the relationship between the linguistic choices and the disciplinary purposes it serves, I'm trying to understand I understand the second point is meaning in language. Can you give me an example of what linguistic choice, is it about the vocabulary, the usage of vocabulary?
Social versus academic language, yeah.
It's just trying to get them to use the academic language in the classroom. I can't even think of anything. If they're discussing geology, they may say, instead of saying a rock, say, well, what else do you know? What might we call that? So it's a social language versus your academic language, because they're so used to using social language when they're with their peers that this encourages the academic language among peers.
Grammatical structure, everything that goes with it.
So if you didn't hear the question he had asked is how, what linguistic choices, like what that meant. So that's what we were answering, just giving them those choices of words. And what's great about that, it's gonna spill over into their vocabulary and their writing. So as students are using more and more vocabulary, we're gonna see that writing improve too.
But Kevin, it's also not just vocabulary level, it's situation in those phrases and making sure that students have that metacognition to know which step they need to take and what kind of language is needed when taking those steps and navigating it. So in a little bit, we're going to be talking about some of the student moves and some of the resources that come along with that. And I think it'll be a little clearer.
Along with, under the teacher moves, linguistic choices. If you go on and you look at that website and look at some of the videos, you'll see, like they may have come up with a list of words that may have been the vocabulary list from the text. And the teacher would give them those words, or they would write their words. And those are the linguistic choices, that could refer to that, to get them to use these specific academic words in their everyday discussions.
Okay, so some modifications for English learners. The goal is go and repeat it, multiple and deep. I like to think of it as move from asking what is happening to why something is happening. And for our I keep going back to the science standards, our students really have to be able to understand why things are happening. And so just providing that repeated, English learners need that repeated exposure to multiple experiences with ideas in order to make connections. This comes in like with our classroom teachers, when they share with us what they're doing in the classroom, we can provide those multiple opportunities for students to use the vocabulary and to practice the academic words that they're using in the classroom. Multiple provide information in multiple ways, voice, print, pictures, in order to provide language cues to ensure meaning making. This is where it's very important for our teachers to understand the linguistic levels and language levels of our students. By knowing their language level, we can know what type of modifications they may need, like if they need more pictures to support their learning or whatnot. So the multiple and then the deep is provide students with new questions and ideas and build on what students just learned. Meaning is a stored experience, so English learners will build meaning through multiple exposures. So that's where the teacher is a facilitator, making sure they're asking those questions and getting kids to repeat, and for our quiet students, getting them to keep talking about it. We want our kids to be talking in order to really understand what they're learning. So, okay, modifications continued. Provide opportunities to discover the relationship between meaning and language. And that again goes with just letting kids talk and having the teacher just, kind of step back and let kids really talk about and engage in that discourse and argumentation of what they're learning. Asking questions to probe further discussion and collaboration. And then taking time to discuss why you want students to be more precise, more detailed, or more objective. So, and that just goes back to, why are we learning this? Like making sure students are aware of what their learning objective is and why they need to get there.
Okay, so now we're moving on to some of the student discourse moves. And this is where we kind of mentioned some of these at the very beginning. So these are different steps that students can take during their instruction and during their coursework. So, and this is how they kind of develop this kind of common understanding of those practices that I was discussing earlier. And something that's really kind of interesting, so we've come up with these ideas. This is what the research is showing, are the moves that students can take in instruction and in small group. One of the things that I really like with the STEM for ESL resources is that the discourse moves are scaffolded depending on the language level of the students. And I think one of the things that's interesting is the moves don't differ for the students when you see it, but the amount of language that you expect the students to produce is different. Okay, and then Reagan.
I'm back. So as EL teachers, we're going to know these strategies, or a lot of these strategies, on the next few slides, but these are some strategies to use to help students clarify their thinking. The big one that everyone always knows, or I always use, is wait time. Give them that 10 to 20 seconds to formulate their ideas, especially gives ELs translation time, figuring out what they're supposed to say in English. Using paired activities to help students clarify their ideas, also hear it in English before they have to share it with a large group. And another big one to use, especially with lower level students, drawing or sketching their ideas out. So as a teacher, you can actually see what's going on. If they can't verbalize it to you, they can show you. Some strategies to use to help students listen carefully and think about other students' ideas. It's a big one for my kids. They cannot listen and respond correctly. So asking students to rephrase and repeat. I actually lean more towards the rephrase to show they actually understand what their partner was talking about. Another one my kids love, my low ones love it, but my high levels think it's hilarious to play charades, but showing what the other person said, acting it out. My fifth graders, yeah, they got a kick out of that this year. And for the higher level students, identifying the evidence in their partner's explanation. To help students make their ideas and thinking public, asking them to fill out or extend an explanation, whether it's theirs, teachers, and other students. Clarify or repair how an idea is expressed. As a teacher, prompting to clarify what they actually mean by what they said. Or a big one is just repair what they said. You know they said it, they have the idea correct, but maybe they didn't verbalize it correctly. Repeating it just in the correct way. Without drawing attention to the fact, no, that was wrong. Just say it correctly for everyone to hear. And the last one on this slide, ask students to explain other classmates' thinking in whatever language combination is accessible to them. Some can do their native language, some can do English, or a combination of the two. To deepen reasoning, this is a hard one for them. First, you can ask students how they would test that idea. Might take some wait time, some think time with this one. You can compare two student-generated models, do this whole group, analyze how the class collective thinking has changed from the beginning of the lesson or project to the end, and ask at the end what new questions occur now after the experience and the discussion that you didn't have at the beginning. To mark or emphasize an idea, Sarah mentioned this earlier on one of her slides. A big one is just repeating, revoicing. The more exposure to an idea that a student has, the more likely it is it's going to actually stick. So repeat it as many times as you possibly can. Have students paraphrase and just bring as much focus to the idea as possible. Repetition, visuals, anything you can think of. Help students build meaning, that peer-to-peer talk. Again, this references back to a couple slides ago, but prompting for paraphrase, but also get confirmation from the partner or the group members that the paraphrase was correct, actually what they said. Prompt for clear connections between the student's response and a previously stated idea. So another student's response or a teacher presented idea. And again, model valuing whatever language combination they're comfortable using, whether it is just drawing, English, native language, or a mixture of all of them.
Some tips for starting and building an effective practice for your classroom teachers. When presenting this, they may seem very overwhelmed, so you want to encourage them not to try to do it all at once. Just give them small parts to try with the and again, the resources have some great maps to print out and to focus on certain skills. Let your students go through the productive struggle time, which I know that's hard for a lot of teachers to let go and just give them that time because we're always short on time. So, but giving them that time to try to work something out, work it through, and that goes along with think time, giving students time to think, which our ESL students need that extra time. And then don't get stuck on time. The students are engaged, just let it happen. Let them keep collaborating and talking if the discussion is going good. We want to make sure to keep encouraging that discourse. And then understand the ideas deeply yourself. Read and understand what the kids are learning before you go into a lesson, and make sure you communicate that with your like the ESL teachers and whatnot, just so they can, again, build on that, because if students are asking you questions and you're not engaged, then our students will not be engaged. So just making sure that we understand what we're teaching our students as well. And then as a facilitator, we're letting go of that control and trying to control the conversation. We're trying to build students' leadership skills and academic language, so trying to get them to talk more and to lead those discussions. So. And then the last one, meaningful and deliberate grouping. Here we have the little box. Here's H for high, medium, low, And just making sure when you group your kiddos that they are in a good mixture, so you're not having students overpower each other. And I know like Reagan is really good at using the Kagan strategies for grouping kids. So, and this is where, as ESL specialists, that we can help our teachers grouping our students, because we know their language levels and proficiency levels and how to scaffold those supports for them. So that would be something that I would want to do for my classroom teachers is to help them with that grouping, to make sure our kiddos are getting what they need in that small
Grouping,
group.
you need to take into account obviously the language level, but this is more on the academic side. Their academic levels would put them in those categories.
Does anybody know why it's grouped this way? The reason that, we always think, well, the highs need to be together and the lows need to be together. But if you put your high with your low, your high is going to be talking above their head. And your low is not going to listen. If you start talking to me about organic chemistry, I'm going, not listening. And that's the big gap that those children face. If you put high with a high medium as their shoulder partner, then they're pretty close. They can understand the same vocabulary. They're on the same, kind of maybe academic playing field, I suppose. If you put the high, medium, and with the low, then you're still pulling that low up, but that high medium person student isn't talking so far over their head that they're not getting it. That they can relate a little bit better. So you've got a gap big enough to pull along those who need a little extra help, but you don't have a gap so large that nobody's getting anything out of it.
Okay, there's lots of different lesson scenarios that are also on the website, and we'll just leave it at that. Classroom application.
Yes, it's a blank screen. How do you see, or what are some examples that you see how this working in your classroom? What are some ways that you see it could be useful?
I'm a math pull-out ESL teacher, so we do a lot of math tasks.
I'm sorry, say that again, math tasks.
We do a lot of math tasks and problem-solving activities, and the more discourse we get, the better. So I think all these strategies work with that.
Very good, yes, in math, especially since there are so many ways to solve a problem, my way may not be the same as Liliana's way, but I can learn from her and she can learn from me. Any other ideas? I thought of when the children of fourth grade talks about landforms and how it impacts, how different landforms impact the lives of the people around them. And for example, volcanoes. And at that time, the volcano was erupting in Hawaii. And I didn't realize, but just by listening to them talk, and I gave them a list of vocabulary words. And they could use each of those, use those vocabulary words, and they began helping each other. And that's a huge part of the discourse, if you noticed, was accepting, saying, oh, I agree with your ideas, but what if we added this? Okay, I agree with your idea that it wouldn't be wise to live by a volcano. However, what if we built a house that could withstand that heat? It goes on with the kids. And I found them being more interested in what they were going to read, knowing that they were going to get to come up with ideas about it.
One of my favorite activities I've done with my kids this year, we designed towers to help Harry, who is this creature who is somewhat height challenged. And my second graders are going over measurement. That's one of their big skills in second grade. So we compete to see which group of students can create like the highest tower, and they have to work together to come up with several different drawings and discuss the pros and cons of each design solution, how they might improve on another student's designs. So it's a very interactive unit that kind of all collaborates with our reading, writing, and math standards. And I think when you find that sweet spot of integration, and you're not just teaching skills, but you're teaching that knowledge, I think it really impacts student learning.
Another idea is that when this becomes part of, earlier we were talking about, having them coming in and just talking what they did on that Monday. That starting with that is a good way to introduce this discourse. And then moving it to academic language, I always think of Bloom's taxonomy immediately, and I have my kids kind of stuck on there in my mind, where they are and where I want them to be. And that guides me in what kind of questions to ask individual kids in their groups to expand on their thinking. These are classroom supports that you can use when you know your children. And again, this isn't just for ELs. This is for all children, all students at any grade and any level. The big thing to notice here is that when you have children who are low English proficiency, and yes, I mean all children, texting and Snapchat is not language, but that's the language our children use. Mine told me the other day something he's 10, and he used the initials. And I looked at him and I said, "What?" He goes, "You know what that is?" I said, "Yes, I do, but it's for a text message use. Speak in English when you're, in proper English when you're speaking to people." But that's what they're familiar with. That's what they know. So again, this is scaffolding and supports for all our learners. And as you notice, they get fewer and fewer. The higher the English language proficiency, the less supports they need.
And all of these supports in this list are on some of the handouts on the STEM for ELLs, and they were all part of the research that was done. So this is like a proven list of supports. Yes.
It's on these are on page 18 of that website.
All right, so along with those scaffolds that Sandy just showed you, some teacher moves to help students move proficiency levels for math. Moving students from low to intermediate language level. Some things you need to do: describe ideas explicitly and very precisely, breaking them down into smaller chunks that are more digestible language-wise, using compact ideas, using conversational style English or closer to conversational style English with a little bit easier vocabulary is a lot easier for them to understand. However, when you're moving students from intermediate to higher, adjust the message to the content and use questions that convey meaning and shape messages into different contexts. For science, again, the low to intermediate is very similar, describing the complex ideas clearly and with as few words as possible, and presenting the same topic in different ways, trying to, again, that repeat and repetition. To move students from intermediate to high, just expressing your ideas objectively and confidently, and let them digest it.
And to add on that, one thing that I like to do with some of our classroom teachers, when they tell us a unit that they're going to do, a science unit, we'll front load our kids with that vocabulary, so when they go back in the classroom, they're able to use that language and express their ideas, and it gives them more confidence. So, for us that do pull out, being able to front load that information really helps with the discourse in the classroom, because those students will get some of that background knowledge and be able to share that. So it's a big part of it.
So as we talked about earlier, our objectives for the day, and we always put a content objective and a language objective. That helps us build the discourse that we've been talking about. We investigated the relationships between language, discourse, and reasoning with students in the content of math and science. Language, we applied the practices of academic discourse through various activities to develop a deeper understanding of how to engage all learners in academic language and support critical thinking.
Okay, so here are some of the resources. This is the website.
The videos on the website are literally a minute to 2 minutes. I don't think there was any over like 2 minutes. But it was just really good to see the kids. And like they had some of them had sentence frames taped to their desk, so they knew to refer back to that. So this became part of that routine and ritual that we were speaking about earlier. Oh.
Right, so as you can see, here's the actual website. There's lots and lots of different activities and tools and guides for teachers to use that we've kind of used to make this presentation. We've kind of gone over a few of these resources. This really is just touching the surface on this topic. You'll really want to delve in deep with a lot of these resources that are available.
The reflection questions for strengthening your practice, that's something really good to think. I know a lot of the times I'll think, well, I do that already, or we do that. And those questions on that portion really help you think a little deeper, which is what we're wanting the children to do. And it really makes you reflect on, am I being as intentional as I could be with those questions?
I know this was a lot of information, and like
Very quick.
When I was first introduced to this, it took me a few times where I had to go back, rewatch the videos, and just to really understand and grasp it. And I feel like it's very doable. And just those 2 books on the sides, like they take forever to download if we tried it, but those are really good to go through too on the math and science, and it gives you some great reasons why we need to do this with our students and just the research behind it. Another resource of a book I read this summer is called Visible Learning for Literacy, and it talks about the effect sizes for activities that we do with students. And what I liked about it is if you have teachers that are questioning, like, why do I have to do this? And like this, there's information in here that shows it's research-based, that using language discourse has high effect size in your classroom. So you're going to see results if it's done the way it should be done. So it's just another resource to show teachers that, there's research to back this up, this will work, and, we want our students to get there academically, and it's going to transfer over to their literacy and writing. So
think of it as instead of this, like we always say, this is one more thing to do. Well, this isn't one more thing to do. This is the tool that's going to help you get it done. Okay, and this again, it's going to boost every child benefits. It puts the learning back on the students, which makes them accountable, and it gives them ownership of their learning, and it not only meets the addresses the standards, our upcoming science and math standards, but it truly does prepare them for the real world, a world that we don't even know exists yet. Do we have any questions?
One of the things that helped me understand this, it kind of goes back in the 80s where you had the skills approach, reading, writing, listening, speaking, and then that speaking piece was the functional language, and then Cummins and Brown came along and said we've got the communicative method. So this is really the communicative method with academic language, because and helping students understand that functional language is actually a key that unlocks meaning. It's like you're giving them the power to unlock meaning to whatever, to science or history, and where they can explore. But that functional language of those moves gives a lot of power to the student, and I think it's fun for them to help them know, wow, you got a lot of power with this question.
That's absolutely correct, and that's the goal of it. Thank you.